Hello, welcome. Happy New Year. This is my third blog in my video series, video blog. So welcome back. I hope you liked the last one on sin. Today I'm going to talk about why do bad things happen to good people. Recently in our family we've had two people that we know, ex-co-worker and a family friend, pass away unexpectedly. And the question is always, why do such good people? Why do bad things happen to good people? And I get that question a lot. So that's what I want to talk about today. Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, first of all, you got to determine whose standard of goodness are you applying that to. Today I want to talk to, mostly maybe unbelievers today. If you're not a believer or a Christian or a follower of Christ, or maybe you just think you are, but you have nothing to do with the church or the gospel or the Bible or prayer, or basically you're just not a believer. That's who I'm talking to today. If you are a believer and a follower of Christ, and a lot of this may be new to you, but a lot of it may not be. And if you already know it, hey, maybe just share it with somebody who you think maybe doesn't know it. So, why do good things happen to bad people? Excuse me, let me reverse that. Why do bad things happen to good people? Well, first of all, it's a pretty easy answer. There are no good people. We all assume from a worldly perspective that everybody's good. We like to categorize ourselves based on our goodness. Like, I do this, this, and this, so I'm better than him, or I do this and that, and they don't do this and that, so that exalts me above them, and it gives us a way of exalting ourselves above people. And in the world, that's what we do. And I do it myself sometimes, and it's easy to do, and sometimes it's not so easy to do. But what's interesting in the book of Ecclesiastes 7:20, I want to read this to you. We're not really sure who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. It could have been Solomon, but there's debate there. But in 7:20 it says, "There is not a righteous man on earth who does what is right and never sins." So basically, if you think you got it all figured out and you're exalting yourself above those people, now the Charlie Sheens of the world who's possibly beat his wife, and all the people we see in the media that they like to bash and destroy. We like to exalt ourselves above them and say, what losers? When really, based on what the Bible says, we're losers too. We're in the same boat. From a worldly perspective, we may say to ourselves, but I don't do that, and I don't do this, and I surely wouldn't do that. I wouldn't harm kids, and I surely wouldn't do this to that person, or I don't talk like that or act like that, so I must be better than they are. Well, from a worldly perspective, you probably are. But what's interesting, and if you look at a spiritual perspective, the way God looks at us, because He says, none are righteous, no, not one. He looks based on goodness, based on His standard, not the Oprah Winfrey standard. See, what's interesting is, if we go on a worldly standard, then I'm screwed, because Oprah Winfrey's the Mac Daddy. Her goodness is so evident. And I'm not talking about her beliefs here, and we all know she's a little sideways. She knows the story, and she's got to come to grips with that. And I'll let God figure that out. But based on her worldly standard and that goodness she displays, I'm screwed, because she's the Mac Daddy. She gets it done. She does things I could never do. I don't think I've even been gifted to do, and I surely don't have the money to do it. But God's not going to judge us on a worldly standard. If you don't believe in God and you don't believe in any of this, surely you still believe in goodness. And my question to you is, what do you base, or what do you determine your goodness on? Like, in other words, if you think you're good and someone else is bad, in other words, how can something bad happen to good people? Where do you determine the standard? If you don't believe in God and you're not a believer and you're not a Christian, where's the standard come from? Because if that's the case, then everybody's got their own standard, and that means we're all jacked up. But see, what's unique is God says He has one standard, and His standard is perfection. And none of us can meet that. The book of Exodus 20, the Ten Commandments. Many of you may have heard of that. You must know that the Ten Commandments, there's not one of those you haven't broken. And the Bible says that if you've broken one, you've broken them all. And that just proves that none of us are good. So really none of us are good. So if you were to ask the question, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, there are no good people. We're all bad. In God's eyes, we need one thing. We need perfection. And there's only one man He sent to forgive us of that sin, to make us perfect in God's eyes. And that's Jesus Christ. That's why He hung on a cross and asked for you to believe that and accept that and surrender to that and allow Him to move in your life. And that forgiveness of that sin is what's so interesting, because that forgiveness makes you perfect. That forgiveness makes God forget all of your past, previous, or future sin. And that's the only way that can make you good. There is no worldly standard of goodness. It's only God's in His perfection. And what that should do is open your eyes to where you stand and where we stand when we try to exalt ourselves above other people. And don't get me wrong, I struggle with this just as much as you do, or maybe somebody you know. And it's tough to do. It is tough to do. There's some people that you want to crack in the head. And you know, there's probably people that want to crack me in the head. But I'll leave you with this. I knew a pastor once who was taking a friend girl to church. She'd never been to church. She was kind of promiscuous. She was involved a lot in outside sexual relations, outside of marriage, fornication. And he wanted to take her to church and really introduce her to Christ and what the message of Christ was. And eventually he wanted her to be a Christian. He wanted her to be saved and be free and have peace. And when he got to the church, it was a guest speaker, and the guest speaker just happened to be preaching about sex. And here's what was so interesting. When he started off, there was hundreds of people in the audience. He started off with a beautiful rose, and he said, "Women, ladies, men, this is what you look like. This beautiful, perfect rose. You are pure. You're very pure and clean." And he went and he handed it out to the audience, and he started to pass it around. And it went, and he said, "Everyone take it, touch it, feel it, smell it, see how pure it is." And after it went all through hundreds and hundreds of people, as it did, he began to preach and teach about sexual sin, and why before marriage, how impure it is and unwrong it is, and how you get herpes and AIDS and all these diseases that corrupt you and make you impure. And it was kind of offensive and kind of convicting, but you're thinking, man, the first time I want to bring somebody to hear the gospel, they got to hear this. And maybe a little judgmental, but still possibly true. And when he was all done with the message, he asked to get his rose back. And here's what's really interesting. The rose was brought back up to him, and he said, "Look at this rose." And the rose was tattered and beaten and broken, and all the petals were off, and the stem was broken in many spots, and it was destroyed. And his point was, this is what you look like. This is what you look like when you give yourself away before marriage, or sexual fornication, or adultery, or all these things that are impure in God's eyes. Because remember, He wants perfection. And what's so interesting is, as so accurate maybe as that was, is this is the best part, that he never got the point, is that, you know what? When he said, who would want this rose now? His point was, who would want you now after you've been beaten and banged and torn up and fallen in sin? Well, can I tell you something, people? Jesus wants the rose. Jesus wants the rose. He hung on a cross and died for that rose. And if you're that rose, you're beaten and torn up and banged up. And I'm not just talking from a sexual perspective, but from any perspective. If life's just throwing you a curve and your stem's broke and your petals are falling off and you just feel imperfect, you're not as pure as the rose was before it got handled around, Jesus wants the rose. See, Jesus wants it. Everybody else may not want it, because they might think they want the best rose or the perfect rose, but Jesus died on the cross for the rose. And that's what I want to leave you with today. Bad things happen to good people, but the problem is there are no good people. The only good people are those that are forgiven by Christ, those that have accepted the cross and what He did for us. So just remember this: Jesus came for the rose. And if you feel like you're the rose, He came for you. So open your eyes to it. Live pure. Get in the Word. And try to do good. Do your best. Peace.